If you were on Pinterest in the 2010s, you may recognize this room. It was built and designed in 1912 by Henry Davis Sleeper, the interior designer who lived here at Beauport. Like most people, the wallpaper blew me away, and the site manager showed me some cool details.
It comes from a company called Zuber, and the pattern is called Décor Chinois, and it was meant to be a dining room wallpaper. Here, Henry Sleeper's taken it and he's chopped it to fit the space. You can see above the window. He's even cut out pheasants and the flowers you can see, and almost like decoupaged them in a bare spot because he was that careful about, where he wanted the patterns to be.
The whole home has 50 rooms, all with very different styles that are equally deserving of Pinterest fame. If you want to see the house for yourself, it's called the Sleeper McCann House in Gloucester, Massachusetts. If you can't make the trip, you can listen to my podcast called Someone Lived Here and comment if you want a design inspo video of Beauport. This is how I found out that a mouse crawled across this woman's face. You might not recognize her, but you've probably heard the name. This was Isabella Stewart Gardner, like the Heisted Museum, and she was one of the wealthiest women in Boston. She was also friends with a group of fun people who had homes in Gloucester, Massachusetts. These two men were neighbors, and more on a few occasions. When Pyatt was out of town, Sleeper would look after the place and send him letters. Isabella Stewart Gardner would often visit for long stretches in the summer. In August 1908, Sleeper wrote to Pyatt, "Red roof is well, only one more mouse caught. The one that was caught ran across Mrs. Gardner's face in the night before he found the trap which proved his tomb." This friend group was a lot more than just mice on the face, so if you want to learn more about them, check out my podcast episode on Henry Davis Sleeper. He was an interior designer who built his house Beauport around his collections. Check out Someone Lived Here, Season 3, Episode 2 to hear more. While making my podcast, I got a nice reminder that people have been gay since forever. I was recording at this house in Gloucester, Mass., which is nice outside and beautiful inside. Henry Davis Sleeper designed Beauport and lived here in the early 1900s. But I want to look at one item above his desk. It looks a lot like mourning embroidery that was used in the early 1800s to commemorate a death. Here are a few examples. You'll notice they have urns, willow trees, and sad women. This one has all of that, but you may notice one different thing. Two men embracing. My fanfiction is that he faked his death and now they're running off together. But knowing Henry's life story, it might be about reuniting with your love after death. I wanted to pull out a few more of the sweet letters between these two men. Henry Davis Sleeper was a big romantic. In a photo of his room at his parents' place in Boston, you can see at least one photo of his first partner on the desk, Guy Carroll. Guy was a writer and dedicated his book to Sleeper. In it, the protagonist is a bachelor wanting to build a house without getting a wife. Carroll died suddenly at 31, and when Sleeper met A. Pyatt Andrew in Boston, he was still mourning that loss. In the first letter Sleeper sent to Pyatt, he included an article by Carroll. The letter ended with a request for a date. "Why won't you dine with me on either Wednesday or Thursday at 7? Just ourselves." Pyatt accepted that invitation, and they had more after that. Months later, in a letter, Sleeper wrote, "You certainly are a many-sided person. I was thinking the other day that I had never expected the good fortune of again finding anyone possessing so many of the characteristics that made Guy Carroll what he was, which was so sincere a tribute on my part that I rather wanted to tell you of it." A few months later, "If by any chance you should have no gayer thing to do, why not dine with me on Wednesday the 27th? And around the 1-year anniversary of their first meeting, Pyatt's diary for April 16th says, "Harry Sleeper came down with many presents, spent day and night here." Sleeper went on to build his house Beauport and stayed at Pyatt's red roof to oversee. These letters are all one-sided, since none of Sleeper's papers were saved, so what Pyatt wrote back doesn't exist, but there's hints that Sleeper's trying to hold on to something. When Sleeper was looking after Red Roof, he wrote, "If there is anything you want done or seen to while you are gone, don't forget me, and how eager I am to show my gratitude for all the happiness which the last 2 years have brought. My best hours, now, will be looking after Red Roof and your interests. Think of me sometimes, and come home unchanged." These are all from a book of letters published in 2005 that they sell at the Beauport gift shop. I included more in my podcast episode, including Sleeper's mom's reaction to the gift Pyatt gave him for Christmas. It's pretty sweet. This man was Okakura Kakuzo, a Japanese art historian. He was actively fighting against the yoga art style, which had become popular in 1870. The style took European artistic techniques and materials and used them to depict classic Japanese subjects and themes. Okakura's earliest political victory was in 1884, getting Japanese materials back into early education art classes. He was a founder of the Japan Art Institute and Tokyo School of Fine Arts. In the catalog for an exhibit of his close friends in New York, he described the movement. The Bijutsun is a protest against the pseudo-classic and the pseudo-European. We claim that art must be national, that we shall be lost if cut away from our traditions, and at the same time, we consider individuality to be the essence of vitality. At 41, he took a role at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. There, he cataloged the Japanese art in their archives. While in Boston, Okakura met Isabella Stewart Gardner. She first wrote to him with a question about a piece, but after that, their relationship became social. In their letters, you can find poems and deep conversations. When Mrs. Gardner was sick, Okakura sent a red jade amulet with the note, "If you wear it, the pain will go." Mrs. Gardner would attend his friends' art exhibitions and host them when they were in the U.S. In this photo, Okakura visited Red Roof in Beauport with Mrs. Gardner in 1910. He would die 3 years later at 50 in Japan with his family. Okakura Kakuzo's book, The Ideals of the East, was a really interesting read as a Japanese historical perspective on the arts movements of the late 1800s. And if you're looking to learn more about Japanese art history, I'd recommend following Ume Boy.